All right, let's talk about something you probably use, I don't know, 100 times a day, the search bar. It's just there. But have you ever stopped to think about how that little box became, well, the key to pretty much everything? That's the story we're getting into today.
I mean, seriously, think about it. Before, you could just type something into a search bar. What did you do? The internet was this huge, chaotic mess. It was like a library where all the books were just thrown in a giant pile. So how in the world do we go from that digital free-for-all to getting answers in like half a second?
Well, lucky for us, the answer is laid out pretty clearly in the source material we're using for this explainer. You can think of this chart as our map. It's going to guide us through all the key players, the breakthrough ideas, and those aha moments that totally changed the game.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the early days, the unsearchable web. Then we'll meet the first navigators who tried to make sense of it all. After that, we hit the Google answer, which, well, you know. Then we'll see what happened next with new needs, new engines. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a look at your search bar explained.
So let's just imagine for a second. Picture it. It's the early 1990s. The internet is exploding, right? But it's not the organized thing we know today. It's just a giant collection of files and pages with no real connection. If you wanted to find something specific, like a piece of software, good luck. You basically had to know where it was already, or get really, really lucky.
But then, in 1990, we get our first little spark of a solution. It was called Archie. And yeah, our source material calls it the very first search engine. But here's the catch. It didn't search web pages. Nope. It had one very specific job: to index FTP files so people could find software to download. It was a small step, for sure, but it was the first step in trying to bring some order to the chaos.
Okay, so Archie was a start. But then the World Wide Web, it just goes nuts. It explodes in popularity. And suddenly the problem wasn't just about finding files anymore. It was about finding actual websites. So a whole new challenge pops up, and the next wave of pioneers had to figure out how to draw the first maps for this new digital world.
And this timeline, man, it really shows you just how fast things moved in that decade. You've got Archie in 1990 kicking things off, and then boom, 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 you get these major players jumping in, each with their own unique idea about how to organize the web. The pace of change was just incredible.
So first up, you've got Yahoo in '94. The founders, Jerry Yang and David Filo, had this idea: what if we just used people to organize the web? Our source calls it a directory-style service, and that's exactly what it was. It was like a giant phone book for websites, all hand-curated by humans. You could browse through categories, which was cool, but you can probably guess the problem. The internet was growing way too fast for people to keep up.
Then, literally just 1 year later, AltaVista shows up. And it takes a completely different, much more tech-heavy approach. It just went out and crawled a massive chunk of the web, indexing everything it found. And as you can see here, it gave users these advanced search options. It was super powerful for its day, but it was also kind of a fire hose. You'd search for something and get back thousands of results, most of them totally useless. You had to do all the hard work of sifting through the junk.
And that right there, that was the next huge problem. The web was getting too big for humans to sort, like with Yahoo, but it was also too messy for a simple keyword search like AltaVista. So the real challenge wasn't just finding an answer, it was finding the right answer, the best one, the most relevant one.
And then comes 1998. This is the year. Two students at Stanford, you've probably heard of them, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they launched this little project that is going to completely change everything. 1998. That is the year that search history pivots.
So this is where it gets really interesting, because this shows the huge shift in thinking. The old way, the human directory, it just couldn't keep up. But the new way, the algorithmic way that Google introduced, it was brilliant. It didn't just look for your keywords. It ranked pages based on relevance and authority, and the secret sauce was how it did it. Basically, it saw a link from one website to another as a vote. So if a lot of important websites all voted for one page by linking to it, Google figured, hey, this page must be pretty important, and ranked it higher. Genius.
And this quote from our source material really nails it. Fast, accurate, AI-based results. That was the magic. It wasn't just about finding stuff. It was about finding the right stuff and doing it fast. That obsession with getting you the best answer right away on that first page, that's what changed everything.
You'd think the story ends there, right? Google wins, roll credits. But not so fast. Because even with this one giant player dominating the scene, people started wanting different things from their search engine. New needs, new concerns, and that created little openings for competitors to pop up.
And you can see that diversification right here. You've got Microsoft's Bing, which tried to compete by being built right into all their stuff. Then there's DuckDuckGo, which made its whole identity about privacy, promising they wouldn't track you. You have regional giants like Baidu in China and Yandex in Russia that just got the local language and culture better than anyone else. And then you even have something like Ecosia, which found a totally different niche, an ethical, eco-friendly search engine that plants trees. Pretty cool.
Okay, so that was a super quick tour through, 30 years of history? So let's pull it all together and talk about the landscape today.
And honestly, this little table from our source does a great job of summing it all up. You've got the oldest, Archie, the one that kicked it all off, the most popular, obviously Google, your privacy-focused option, DuckDuckGo, and the eco-friendly one, Ecosia. It's wild to think that that simple little box on your screen now represents so many different choices.
Which brings us right back to today and, the future. Because the same thing that made Google king, AI, is now shaking things up all over again. We're thinking more about privacy, about ethics, and all of these big questions mean that the story of the search bar is definitely not over. It just makes you wonder, who's going to build the next chapter?